Gordon, appreciate
Gene.
you coming out, man.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here. Happy to be here.
Yes, sir. Actually, thanks for volunteering to be here.
Yep.
You hit me up and said that you'd be willing to come out here, man. It really made it a little bit easier finding out what direction this thing was going to go. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, like I told you, I find this sort of thing pretty interesting and watch a lot of content on YouTube. And when you put that up, I said, I'm the guy for the job.
Right on, man.
Give it a shot.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. It's my first time doing a podcast. Is it your first time as well?
It is. It is.
So we'll see where it goes, and we'll get through it.
All right.
So, Gordon Kretser, Chesapeake Valley Seed.
Yes, sir. You pronounce my last name correct. It's
a big one, huh?
It is
Kretser.
A big one.
How else do they pronounce it?
Kretser.
Kretser.
Usually there's some
Like
sort
a German?
of. Exactly.
Yeah.
We changed that pronunciation.
Right.
Moving stateside.
Very good. Well, Gordon, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am originally from the Eastern Shore. Grew up on the Eastern Shore, Salisbury, Maryland. I now reside in Ocean City, Maryland. Went to college at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia. 4 years down there, and took a position in the seed business with Pennington Seed back in 2008 when I graduated and hit the ground running. Basically got the job even before I graduated, and the first day out I was learning the ropes in the seed business.
Good stuff, man. So you live in Ocean City, and Chesapeake Valley Seed is based out of what location?
In Savage, Maryland. So that's just kind of equal distance between D.C. and Baltimore. Right off of 95.
But you guys service the Mid-Atlantic, pretty much, tri-state area?
Correct. So Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, usually Richmond North, but primarily Maryland and Delaware, Eastern Shore. Really, it's just my bread and butter just because where I travel back and forth to and from the warehouse, obviously Eastern Shore and Delaware, growing up, knowing a lot of people, contacts in ag. And then, of course, with my job with Pennington, I learned all that that region, Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia, because I actually started in southern Pennsylvania territory for them. Had an opening in northern Virginia, so I moved to Virginia. I lived in Reston for 2 years, and kind of learned that region, that section of the business, and just ended up being able to cover all of it.
Right. So our relationship, you're a vendor of mine. Me personally, I purchased like the sediment and erosion control stuff from you, like sill fence, Curlex, contractor mixed grass seed.
Sure.
Various stuff like that. But now Chesapeake Valley Seed covers a broad range of products for this area. So you guys actually do more and provide more than what I get from you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about all the services and everything that you guys have available?
Sure, yeah. So Chesapeake Valley Seed was started in 2013 to create what I like to call a seed house. So when I started with Pennington, we were actually still at that point considered loft seed. And loft seed was known in the region just sort of how Chesapeake Valley Seed is now, where lofts was blending raw ingredients of seed and creating custom mixes and providing seeds bagged to all like seed and feed distributors, hardware stores across the region. So when we started Chesapeake Valley Seed, that was our main focus. We wanted to get back to that seed house mentality of being the experts, having the inventory that no one had, just-in-time service. But with the addition and W.S. Conley acquiring Chesapeake Valley Seed a couple years back, we added to that portfolio of products that I can sell to my customers like yourself. So like you said, sediment and erosion control stuff, but turf and ornamental, chemicals, fertilizers, geotextiles for roadways, patios, pavers, geotextiles that go underneath of them.
Right.
But, it really comes down to what customers that you have, that customer base, and creating that product line. You know, what I feel comfortable selling, talking about. I can basically create any distribution type of market to service my customers. So, for instance, if you came to me and said, I need to find a particular kind of whatever, plastics or geotextiles, I would be able to work with manufacturers and basically broker it and bring it into the area and warehouse it for your needs.
Right. Yeah. So if it's like a certain spec straw matting or Curlex matting or a certain spec silt fence that's kind of out of the ordinary, you still have the ability to bring it in bulk quantity and then provide it that way.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And with W.S. Conley having such a large reach with all the different manufacturers across the country and even internationally, that opened my portfolio exponentially. So while my focus is still on the grass seed and being a seed house and being the expert in our region for grass seed or native grasses, wildflowers, cover crops, I still now I can now add these other products along with it. Okay. So it's been a good thing.
Yeah, right on. So Virginia Tech, 2008, you have a business and marketing degree, right?
Pamplin School of Business.
There you go. First job with Pennington Seed, 2008 to 2012. 2012, you decide to leave Pennington and you join the United States Navy.
That is correct.
Okay, so let's kind of briefly talk about that transition from Pennington to your military service to being self-employed with Chesapeake Valley Seed. Just kind of, I guess it's kind of a neat transition story. So let's go over that and how it happened and what your thought process was with that.
Yeah, that's a big loaded question there. So essentially what happened was after my move to Northern Virginia and to Reston, I created sort of a new market territory for Pennington, grew the business. I think at that point it was my third year with the company, and being at the top of sales month after month, year after year, winning Salesman of the Year, National Salesman of the Year with one of the largest seed companies in the country, or if not the world. I was searching for what next could I conquer. When I was at Virginia Tech, I was very close to joining the Marines. I took a step back, decided to get into into some sort of career and see if that was the right fit, or if I really did want to. If it didn't work out, then I still would always have the opportunity to get into the military. Well, it got to the point where I was burning daylight, and I had to decide to either do it or not. During my time through college, I was on beach patrol in Ocean City. I was always an avid swimmer competitively up until through high school, and that was just something. 9/11 happened.
Also, your time at Virginia Tech was when the shooting happened, right? Were you there for that?
So I was not physically on campus. I was actually studying abroad in New Zealand.
But you were a student there.
I was a student there. Yep. Yeah. And that was a crazy time.
Yeah.
I was hiking a couple of overnight trip in the mountains of South Island, New Zealand. I heard it, on a radio at some outpost, with no electricity. Some guy had some transistor radio, and heard something about it, heard something again on the same segment. And sure enough, by the time I got back into cell phone service, I had all these missed calls, all these emails. The university in New Zealand was trying to get a hold of me. Everybody was trying to get a hold of me.
Right.
Not really sure exactly why. Actually, that would say my only other radio experience or anything like this was the national radio channel service in New Zealand
Right.
got a hold of me for a quick interview on all of it. It ended up being more of a political thing, asking me questions directed towards our gun laws and things like that. So
Yeah.
I kind of had to skirt out of there, but
Right. Don't want to get caught up in that.
right, yeah. It was, that was a crazy time, but
Yeah.
I would say another thing that sort of happened for me while I was working in Northern Virginia for Pennington was the takedown of Osama bin Laden,
Yeah.
and it just
It's a big event. And then, so all that kind of helped you, or I guess helped create that transition from Pennington to the Navy.
it was. And when I made the decision to at least look into it, I literally put a step in the door thinking about it, and all of a sudden went down the slide. It was just that fast. Went to a recruiting office. I enlisted. I had a college education. I didn't even think about going
So
through
college
officer candidate
educated,
school.
and then you hit a bunch of awards at Pennington.
Top of the career chain there, and just said,
Right, just making good money. Were you a commission position?
50-50.
Some commission in there, bonuses and stuff,
sure.
and then enlist in the United States Navy.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
a bit of a pay cut.
A little bit. I think by the time my 2 months of boot camp was over, I actually owed the Navy money
Right.
for uniforms or
Right.
something like that.
That's good though,
but-
man. It's I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all, man. I mean, it's just you got it in your head. It was something you wanted to do. You did it, and I guess once you get that in your head, money's not a thing. I mean, that's not what you're worried about at that point.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And I was in the position where I wasn't concerned about
Right.
money. I
Right.
sold my car. I didn't have a house. Didn't
Yeah.
have a family. What better time?
Yeah, exactly, man.
So
Right on. And then 1 year in the Navy, injured in buds, and that kind of got the Navy career cut short a little bit.
right. So through first phase, I quit. Right. That's really what you have to do or say. You either get injured to the point where you can't move, or you decide to throw in the towel. And I would say I'm on the side of where I had to throw in the towel. Later, finding out that I, ripped all my contralaterals in my hip, and couldn't walk for a month.
Right. So you were hurt.
Yeah, but everybody's hurt.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say, "Oh, but you were injured. You couldn't keep going." But that's not the way you talk about it, because there's
right.
plenty of people out there that were just as broke as me,
Right.
maybe even more so, and they kept going. Class at a 175 starting and 15 graduating, in that same class. Things happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And but I was lucky enough to be able to stay on base there in Coronado, and got into a position where basically it was sweeping, cleaning, helping out in a warehouse, but it was the equipment warehouse. So we were moving product in and out. We were sorting. We were warehousing, moving forklifts around. So I would say it wasn't a waste of time. During that time, going through all the legal procedures or motions of whether it was going to be a medical separation or if I was going to get a surgery there, and serve my time as undesignated seaman, pretty much the lowest rate you can get
Right.
in the military. I was able to get a medical separation that allowed me to move back into a career. And what's really interesting about it is it gave me enough time while working in this warehouse to talk to people back home, see what was going on in the seed business. And happened to be a good buddy of mine that was older than me, had been at Pennington for over 20 years, went out and bought a seed blender. And he found out my position, and, kind of the rest is history. We got together and basically just hit the ground running as soon as I came back.
So you jumped right from the Navy, right into Chesapeake Valley Seed, all in 2013. And then
Yep,
from
that's correct.
2013 to 2019, when you recently sold to W.S. Connolly, you grew the business quite substantially.
Yeah,
So it was fairly successful in that short time frame, that 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I'd say it was very successful.
Good, man. That's
awesome. It was awesome. It was fun times. It's still fun to this day.
Yeah.
It was just back when it first started, knowing it was just you and your sidekick, your business partner, and a warehouse employee or two, and knowing what the impact that we had in our industry was pretty cool to look back and see it.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's a awesome accomplishment. It's a cool story going from the Pennington to the military and then to being self-employed. And then later, so now your current position, you're still with Chesapeake Valley Seed, but the company was sold to W.S. Connolly.
That's right.
And then you're still on board as the director of seed sales for W.S. Connolly.
Right. So both myself and John Strong, the person I mentioned earlier that we started the company with, we both stayed on after the acquisition to run that division of W.S. Connolly in and of itself. So we're still responsible for everything under the roof. We still are dealing with the profit and loss statements and making sure that we're allocating, funds and budgeting properly and expenses. So it still all falls on us, and it's really just the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So.
Right on, man.
Still hitting the ground running.
Yep. So do you still consider yourself self-employed? I mean, you're still responsible for all the day-to-day operations of Chesapeake Valley Seed. Is there upper management that you respond to now or have to listen to, or do they just, all they do is kind of assist you when you need it?
I would say it's really a lot more of just about assisting us when we need it.
Okay. So you're kind of responsible for, as long as you're hitting and making money and hitting certain numbers, they're like, hey, man, keep running with it and let us know what you need help with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Honestly, I prefer when the big decisions do come around, whether it be, equipment purchases or, really big deals that need to have some oversight. I like bringing them in, not only because it makes me feel good to talk about stuff that big with the people who are paying our bills, but nice to have their feedback. And, I mean, the support that they give, kind of allows me to go out and have less nerves.
Yeah, man. I would say
big deals.
As far as being a small business owner, that's the side that's like more like, it's like just, that's the difficult decisions to make. Like, hiring and firing, big decisions. But like bidding on contracts and having certain rates and having certain markup on stuff, and then like leasing warehouses and leasing commercial properties, and then buying big, $100,000 piece of equipment and financing it.
Sure.
Those are the big decisions that I think most small business owners would like to have somebody be like, hey, man, can you look at this? Make sure I'm not like really fucking this up.
Well, yeah. And if you are doing it all on your own, and which we were at some point, you're answering at that point still to somebody, but usually that's the bank. And at this point, I guess you could kind of look at the new owners as the bank, but much easier dealing with people, that like and understand the industry versus a loan officer.
That's right. And then plus you have people and teams of people that are a little bit more seasoned in making those types of decisions.
Absolutely, yeah.
They know what the industry standard is on, loans for used equipment and shit like that.
And things that I'd rather not even care about.
That's right. Yeah.
I'd rather focus on the big picture of what's going to be making my company, my division, as profitable as possible.
Yeah. Cool, man. So, just being self-employed, Chesapeake Valley Seed, I mean, what really made you make that transition from, I guess, the military, basically? Well, you were in the seed industry, but making that transition to being self-employed, like, what was your thought process there? Because I guess you probably could have gone back to Pennington and jumped right off, like right back where you left off, and then, just keep killing it with them doing seed sales. So what made you make that jump into being self-employed?
Honestly, it was on my mind since day one, since I was old enough to, realize running a business and being responsible for yourself and, making a living on your own, not relying on anyone else. That was kind of my mentality since day one, having a little lawn care or grass cutting business. I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
You know, pulling around a cart in the neighborhood, making a few dollars here and there.
Right.
That's a great feeling.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, I think even when I was with Pennington, the ultimate goal was to have something that I could call my own and start, you know, from scratch.
Sure.
So
how old were you when you did that with Chesapeake Valley?
I think I was 28.
28.
I think it was 28.
Yep.
35 now, whatever the math is on that.
Yep. So 6 or 7 years in business.
Yeah, 7 years.
Yep. Right on. Yeah, I'm basically similar story, man. I was always graduated from college. I'm a little bit younger than you. I'm 32 now. But got out of college 2011, had an environmental degree. Got into the construction world right after college. You know, earned a superintendent position fairly quickly. And then I started seeing like the business side of the excavating world. And I noticed, like, with an environmental degree, I started noticing the job sites like the silt fence, the bioretention ponds, all the Curlex stabilization matting. And I was like, man, this is like its own industry in itself. I said, not only am I learning how to do the work, but I have the education to back it. And as soon as I kind of put that together, I mean, it wasn't like immediately where I made the jump to just be like, yeah, I'm doing that now, you know. But I mean, it put that thought in the back of my mind, like, hey, I can make something with this. It's its own thing, and I'm just as qualified as the next guy to do it. So, you know, I started looking into, you know, what I had to do it, and, you know, working weekends and stuff. I formed Mckenzie Contracting in 2015, and then it started out just doing weekend side work and then kind of piecing it together until I could make it full time.
Sure. And
hit the ground running, man. And I mean, it hit me pretty hard because I think I made it full time in 2017, and my wife got pregnant 2017.
Wow.
So it's like, oh shit, man, better make this work.
Hell yeah. I mean, that can help.
Yeah, it's motivation.
You don't have a
man.
chance,
No.
or you don't have a.
Don't have a choice.
Don't have a choice. Excuse
yeah.
me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just figure it out, man. Or you quit and go back to work for somebody else and have a steady paycheck. But fortunately, you know, my wife's been awesome, man. She's been supportive of the whole thing, and you know, I don't have any regrets, man. It's been the best, you know, one of the best decisions I've ever made. So, you know.
Yeah, that transition from a steady paycheck, knowing what you're going to have to do that day, whether it be routine or boring, it's security. You know, that's what most people are looking, and that's the difference, I believe, in business owners or entrepreneurs and
I miss that sometimes.
Excuse me?
I miss that sometimes. I miss being able to get off work at 3:30 and go bass fishing and not have to worry about what's going on at the office, because I haven't had that luxury in a long time now.
Right.
Like, you're constantly thinking about it. Yeah,
the peace of mind of not having to worry about how this, that, and the other is going to come together the next day.
Right.
I get it. It's definitely for some people.
Yep.
I don't think that's us, though.
No, and it's not. I mean, I was always like I was never a very good employee because I would question everything. Like, well, why are we doing it this way?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I would be at work on time every day. I'd be at work early every day. I'd stay late, whatever. I got my job done. But I wasn't an easy employee to get along with, because I'd be like, hey, why are we doing that? Let's do it this way. Well, why don't we switch this up? And then it would just, it would drive employers nuts.
I mean, as soon as you figure out you can do it better than people that are supervising you.
Right.
That usually means something needs to change.
Yeah, and it's not, you think you can do it better. Or I know I thought I could do it better, but then you actually jump into it, and then you're starting to see, like, the money side of it and the financing side of it and payroll. And it's like all the shit that comes together to make the whole thing work that I wasn't responsible for at that time. And but you catch on. It's just, I think for me, it was a lot more than I initially thought it was. Because I don't come from a small business background. Like, it's not, my parents never owned their own business. So I'm really the first one to kind of jump out and do that myself. So, I mean, what's your background on that? Or did you grow up seeing the small business side of it? Or
I did not. No. I mean, I would say both my parents, had their long-time careers.
Right.
They were both in the agricultural food business, vegetable. So maybe there's a little bit of tie in there with my dad's agricultural side of his business, and he got into the sales side of things. He was on the production side early on. So that could have been it a little bit, because I saw the freedom of him brokering loads of frozen vegetables or fresh vegetables, from Mexico to wherever, and millions and millions of pounds of this stuff. I just thought it was fascinating. So I definitely would attribute some of that interest there and that freedom, and that sales side of thing. But yeah, I'm actually fascinated with the way things started with you, just because of all the heavy equipment and the purchasing and the whether it be leasing or
so
the mortgages and the payments on some of this heavy equipment that's big time. That's big responsibility.
Yeah, man. I mean, the shit cannot sit idle, but it doesn't start overnight. Or at least for me, I didn't just go out and purchase a $125,000 excavator. I didn't just go out and buy a $200,000 triaxle dump truck. But what I did is I didn't turn down anything. If a customer came to me and I was doing something small for them, like, just clearing their backyard or something and chipping it up with a rental machine or something, one thing turned to another. But, hey, well, you think you can do this? But, yeah, I can do that. I'll figure that out.
I mean, it was like when you called me the very first time, I think we even ever spoke, although I'd maybe been by here to see you a couple times. You called me up because you had some guy that wanted to plant some, either it was a pasture or it was a wildlife mix for a food plot.
Yep.
You didn't know a lot about it, but you said, hell, I'll do it.
I'll
figure it out.
I'll figure it out, man. Try to make a little bit of money on it.
Yeah, I mean, you called the right person. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, man. And that's, the whole networking thing's intriguing to me too, and that's kind of what I'm hoping to get out of this whole podcast deal, is just build the networking program to where people like you and I can continue discussions like this, get to know each other a little bit, and then the people you deal with and the people I deal with, everybody sees each other, and it just kind of grows as its own little thing. So, but I think the whole aspect of just not turning down work and then just not telling people you can't do something, that's what really catapulted me into being like, okay, well, now I got enough work lined up, I can go buy an excavator. It's like, oh, hey, I need a bigger truck now. Because you get enough of it lined up where it's like, okay, well, I know this thing's going to be working for the next 2 months.
Right.
So let me go get it. It'll go to a job for 2 months, and that gives me 8 weeks to figure out where it's going next, And that's what I did, and that's really what made me take the leap of faith with those big purchases.
Well, and with you having your finger on the pulse with everything that goes on in your business, that work is going to get done.
Oh yeah,
it's gonna. You're not turning it down. You're overseeing it. You may even be the person in the truck or an excavator getting the work done. That's what I see as the most important thing when it comes to owning and running a small business. Is if you start delegating all that stuff out and those decisions out, it's hard to trust anyone else but yourself on some things. And that's actually why I think the situation with W.S. Conley and Chesapeake Valley Seed and their other subsidiaries work so well, is they allow us to run it like our own small business.
right.
And there's pride thing in that, and there's responsibility that if it's going to get done, you better do it yourself. Especially if you want it done right.
Yeah, or at least I make it a point. I try not to send any invoices to customers until I go there and I put eyes on the job. Like, I'm going to make sure it was done the way that I expect it to be done before a customer feels obligated to pay me any money. Because it has gotten to the point where, like, I don't have, I have good guys been with me for years now. I don't have to be at every tree job we're doing. I don't have to be at, every driveway that we're repairing or whatever. I can trust my guys to go do that, but I'm going to check in on them, make sure they have everything they need, make sure they're going to finish on time, and I'm going to look at the final product before my customer gets a bill from me and expects me to, or I expect them to pay me. I want to make sure the product was delivered the way that it was supposed to be, which that's gone a long way. Just that little bit of quality control goes a long way.
Yeah, because it only takes one, right, to kind of mess up the whole thing. and not just one angry customer, but one crew that's disgruntled, or just a couple things that don't get tidied up the way you want them. That can end up hurting you long term. Sure.
Yeah. Yep. So one thing I wanted to ask you about too. So you started Chesapeake Valley Seed with a partner.
Yeah.
I've never had a partner. Sole proprietor, sole owner. Talk to me about the partnership and how that goes. Because for me, I think I could benefit from a partner sometimes, but then sometimes it's like, as the owner, you kind of make decisions on the fly, and like it's decisions that have to be made fast. So it's like if you had to kind of ask somebody else what their thoughts were on the situation, sometimes I feel like that'd be a good thing to help you make sure you're making the right decision. But at other times, it might be frustrating to be like, hey, well, shit, man, now I know this is the right thing to do. I want to roll with it. Yeah. So how's that relationship go there?
I'll tell you, it's a really great question, because whether I knew it or not, our situation between John and I was so cut and dry on our responsibilities that, we were so close and so integral to everything that went on, but his responsibility straight up was to buy and procure grass seed at the best possible quality, best possible price. He had all the relationships out in Oregon, West Coast, where all this stuff is produced, or warm season stuff in Arizona or down in North Carolina. I knew none of those people. I was always on the other side of it, which was the sales. So he just focused 100% of his time on that. I focused 100% of my time on the sales. And then where we did come together, on working on thing was marketing responsibilities. And I'm not saying they weren't important, but the nuts and bolts of it were so cut and dry that.
So he's buying it and you're selling it.
That's it.
That's a pretty good relationship.
So, my suggestion is anybody that's thinking about going into business with someone else or 2 or 3 other people is, make sure everyone stays in their lane. You start crossing over. There can be some good things, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to butt heads and figure that, I can do it better than you, and vice versa, where that's never been an issue. And still to this day, it's still we're in our lanes. And don't get me wrong. He sells some things here and there.
Right.
And I buy some things here and there.
Right. But for the most part, that's not your day-to-day responsibility. And you can count that somebody else that you trust is in charge of that. It's going to make it happen.
And look, somebody that, and it may not happen day one, although we had known each other for a long time, he would know how to buy stuff because he knew how I sold stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't even have to worry about whether I was going to have contractor mix for a customer on a big order, because he's already thought, months ahead of time.
Right.
And that was really impressive. Just almost never being out of stuff. It's a hard feat.
Yeah. That's awesome. Especially now. Like, are you guys having any issues with the COVID stuff, like with not being able to bring product in?
Sure, on the non-seed items, again, being that's what we're experts in between John and I would say we're not having that much issue. It's going to become an issue, but I just feel like we're just way ahead of it.
Yeah.
We kind of like are 2-3 steps ahead of everyone else. And that, again, is from that seed house mentality that I spoke about earlier. If you're worried about selling freaking Curlex all day, then you're going to forget about what you need to focus on with seed. And, you're always looking 6-8 months ahead. Yeah. I'm thinking we buy sod seed, December, January, February, the year before. We're booking that stuff with companies out in Oregon, and we're buying cover crops for fall plant, pretty much now. No one else is doing that. So what ends up happening in a world like this, where everything's short, trucks are hard to find, rates are high, you just have to have the confidence that you have the marketplace. We've driven the market to this point. We know how many pounds are going to be used. It's just whether or not anyone can pick us off.
Right.
whether that's selling cheaper or, again, having product when we don't. We just don't allow it to happen.
Right.
Anybody can sell cheaper than you if
Yeah.
they really want to and
Right.
get someone else's business, but it's not sustainable.
Right.
So you just stay the course. Another thing with Seed House is having people like John or myself that we would call ourselves seedsmen. We're selling the market. So if the market tanks and we've got a bunch of high cost tall fescue or annual ryegrass in the barn, you sell it at market. You're going to sell it for a loss for a short period of time because people are going to keep buying it. They're not going to go elsewhere. Same thing if the market goes way up, we're moving our prices up, stay with market.
Right. You just got to have the cash flow to be able to bite that fucking loss when you have to, and then you're going to get it back eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
and again, that's where W.S. Conley came in.
Right.
We were pushing out of the seams at our warehouse, not just on space, but on financing, on loans. We had this rotational loan situation where you only can have so much on the books. You can put some on receivables and you get a little bit more. But when you're growing 20, 30, 40% a year, the banks just can't keep up with that.
Right.
So having someone to come in, a big swinger, that's the last thing we have to worry about now.
Yeah, just make it happen. They're like, don't worry about the money side. We got the money side.
That's right.
Just go sell some seed.
Don't get me wrong. It was exciting when we did have to play that dance and make it happen.
Well, I'm sure your position now is a lot less stressful in that term.
Sure.
Like, I'm sure you still got quotas to meet and everything else, but not having to worry about the money side as much about where the money's coming from and if you can finance stuff. That's a huge part of it. So to have a bigger partner like that to back you is got to be a good feeling.
Absolutely. And
it allows you to do more.
In real estate, with you, it may be more equipment. For us, it's real estate.
Right.
And I don't mean actually, owning warehouses, but having warehouse space, leasing, and they've got 9, 10 other warehouses where we can stash material if needed.
Yep.
So it's huge.
Yeah, man. Yeah, personally, I think it was a smart decision from what you told me. I've never looked, or up to this point, I've never looked at, being acquired by a bigger player. But I think our industry is a little different too. Like I'm more of a service-based industry, and you're more of a product-based. But, I've heard of, some big players down here like Reliable and, some of the bigger contracting services. They've done that with like smaller environmental companies and stuff. So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
it runs that acquisition thing in our business, like I said, not just in the supply, but on the contracting side. You hear about deals all the time.
Right.
And right now with money being cheap, you're definitely hearing more and more about acquisitions. They can be a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely seen some not so great situations, but
right.
It's the way of the world.
Yeah, man. I guess in our industry, the environmental industry, the I guess you call it light excavation. Like, we're not really civil construction, but it's more like the environmental construction world.
Yeah.
What do you think are the current struggles, challenges that like small businesses are facing? You think it's like finding help, qualified people, the labor shortage, too much regulation from state or federal government? I know the state of Maryland's crazy with regulation on stuff like that. The whole Chesapeake Save the Bay thing.
Sure.
That's what keeps me in business that's the niche market that I target is the environmental construction world. Because it's the construction world, that's what we're doing. But it's all for that purpose. And I complain about it, but I can't complain about it because it keeps the work coming in.
You can always complain about it, right?
Right.
That's just that's the human nature there.
Right.
But people that can't see that the regulations that we have to follow in the erosion sediment control business,
yep,
they have to realize that is that's a blessing.
Yeah.
It's funny, you have these, just to pull one off the top of the list, like same-day stabilization, you know, in the state of Maryland, that say SHA, State Highway Administration. These guys are blowing straw every single time, throwing seed down every single time a dozer runs over it.
Yep.
You know, it could be, they could seed over and over and straw over and over for a week straight.
Yep.
And that's just what the regulation is.
It's like, look, they're not even calling for rain, and we're coming back tomorrow.
You better get you better get some straw on there. Yeah. So think about all the way down the chain. Who benefits from that? And again, people are going to complain about it, and really, a taxpayer could complain about it. Yeah. But it's such a small drop in the bucket on the grand scheme of things.
It's the end consumer. You build a house right now. The silt fence needs to put around it, earth dikes, temporary stone outlets, gabion baskets. What else? You got to stabilize earth dikes with seed and straw or Curlex.
Staples every other foot.
Yep. Super silt fence.
Yep.
And then when you're in, you got the super silt fence post, the chain link, the filter's different. You know, the filter claw's different.
You better have the right gauge. You better have the right height.
Right.
Better have the right openings.
And then dry wells. And then rain gardens.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
You got to tie in all your downspouts. All the waters need to be filtered. You're putting in all these different devices. And, I mean, you're looking at, it's adding, you know, 20 grand, 30 grand to the cost of that house because all of that additional site work needs to be done.
Sure. So, you know, 20, 30 extra may only be, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 more when you start really pushing into those tight regulations like you just spoke of, versus what was already done before, or for states or counties that aren't as regulated. But, you know, you look at the grand scheme of things on like a highway job, you know, same-day stabilization or some of the erosion control products that are used, you're talking about like the most tiny amount of money is allocated just to do that. But essentially what we're doing is we're cleaning up the bay, right? I mean, that's our backyard.
That's the grand scheme of it.
Yeah.
That's why we do what we do.
A lot of the stuff is all tied to Chesapeake watershed.
Right.
And hence the name that we came up with, Chesapeake Valley Seed.
Yeah.
That's what our mentality was. How do we create, not necessarily create products, but a market where people are less inclined to complain about it because it's so difficult to procure or find or get, then like, damn, I want that job because no one else does, or it's so highly regulated or so much oversight. Well, just head down the road, get it from Chesapeake Valley Seed, and be done with it.
Yeah,
it's become easier to take on these, and I'm talking more specifically about crazy seed mixes and and things that people just, it scared the crap out of them, and just now they don't even worry about it because got it in the barn.
Yeah, I mean, I've done those jobs, man. The state highway jobs are like, I did one for it was a state park, and the state park agency required a certain mix, you know, for this park area. You know, we were taking out a bunch of trash and like demoed an old outhouse or something, and you had to stabilize the area with a certain mixture. It was a SHA spec.
Sure.
And it's like, well, you can't just go somewhere and get that. You got to call somebody like yourself. It's like, look, this is what I need. This is the mix I need, and I need it to come with a tag that shows that this is what it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you definitely found this area is regulated enough in that industry where, you know, it's not going away. I mean, it's always going to be around. It's only going to get tighter,
right,
and more regulated. So
yeah, and talking specifically about SHA, you know, look at the last 20, 30 years of reclamation work, highway building jobs that SHA controls and owns. Were all just kind of easy mixes, you know, what I would call easy mixes, just tall fescue, bluegrass, or a temp mix, barley, foxtail millet. You know, you get it certified by the state, Department of Ag comes in, certifies it. So that is sort of tough to do, but that was easy for us, knowing the business. What was difficult for us to figure out was where the state was moving, which was into native grasses.
Right.
So instead of having two species in a mix, there are now most of the right-of-ways that are reseeded are now going into these no mow, no maintenance, no fertility
So
type
it's
of
like
situations.
native grasses, your pollinators, your cover crops.
Right, right. So you're talking about going from
wildflowers. I've done wildflower
wildflower.
mix. I've planted wildflower mixes for people.
Yeah.
And you talk about expensive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's like, well, yeah, I need like 30 pounds of that. It's like, holy shit. Then you get a price on it, and well, that's what they want. Like,
yeah. I mean, you're looking at some of these pollinator mixes being, over $100 a pound. But the one with SHA is pretty, for us, again, it's something we learned and figured out. But went from a 2-species mix on the turf grass mix to, 17 different species, 20 different species in any given mix. And you better have it. And it better be the exact right percentages, right weight, the right germs, the right botanical names, because there's literally people in charge of overseeing that.
Right.
Taking that tag from you and saying, all right, you got it. That's the other thing, that we've branded ourselves in a way that if it has Chesapeake Valley Seed tag, usually inspectors, oh, okay,
yeah,
you guys are good.
Right.
But it's only getting further down that path. So
So speaking of that, like, kind of get away from the seed specific stuff.
Yeah.
For this area, not just Southern Maryland, but the state of Maryland and Delaware, Southern PA, like I guess the Chesapeake Bay watershed. What kinds of like environmental opportunities do you see coming this direction? Like 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, guys like yourself and myself, where should we kind of be gearing up to be prepared for the future of this environmental regulation? Do you think it's more in like the just crazier stabilization stuff, or is it going to be more in like the actual infrastructure of roads, pervious pavements? I mean, where do you see it going, and how should somebody like myself kind of get ready for that?
Yeah. So again, my focus is, and my knowledge is a lot on the seed specific side of things. But with that being said, what's being done on the environmental side of Chesapeake Bay is, the infrastructure side of things, whether it be on the federal government side with infrastructure bill that's pending or potentially coming, or any kind of green energy mandates that we have down the road. I think it's maybe not necessarily more regulation or requirements that you may see, but you'll see so many more projects and acres come up and come down the pipeline. For instance,
Just strictly in the environmental world.
strictly in environmental work.
Like, it's not like, hey, we're putting in a new highway and this is what we're going to require. It's like, hey, no, we're going to just put in this big, submerged gravel wetland to capture all this water from this area. Like, it's just an environmental project. Like, I guess environmental infrastructure would really be the name of it.
Right. So there's a company down in Virginia. I can't think it off the top of my head, but they basically started it by developing wetlands on private land, creating them, knowing that down the road there were going to be mandates that if you build a big skyscraper or a big parking lot with impervious surfaces, you have to figure out where you're going to restore a wetland or create one, what they call wetland credits. So here's this guy out in Northern Virginia with all these acres of
man-made wetlands.
right, that the builder
Right.
is then paying him to own, and then that's the way he's getting permits to build these enormous structures or
Right.
impervious surfaces. So what you will see is that these these wetlands or these environmental projects are going to be more the focus on the development of the entire project. For instance, like solar farms. And any roadways that are done, they're all going to have a focus on where is the water going, how do we retain it, how do we clean it,
Right.
and
Well, what's scary, man, is like this area down here being built up the way it is. The water filtration devices are already being installed. The rain gardens, the dry wells, the bioretention ponds, microbio ponds, submerged gravel wetlands. The names and how they're built go on and on and on.
Right.
And they're all being built. And the inspections are happening, and the builders are putting them in, and then they sell that property or sell that house or sell that row of townhomes or whatever, and the people that are buying it don't realize that now that is their responsibility to make sure that that device is working properly.
Yeah, and to maintain.
And to maintain, and that they gave the county government and the state government permission to come make sure that that device is working properly. So, HOAs are finding out now that, hey, shit, we got to take care of these things. It's going to cost a lot of money to take care of these things. It's a lot of time and effort to make sure that it's working properly. So I feel like there's a lot of people that are on the receiving end of this that are kind of clueless about it because they're not in our industry.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm in it and I barely understand it.
Right, yeah.
To a certain extent.
Right.
I mean, look at...
Like, I meet with HOAs constantly, and they're like, yeah, man, we got this letter from the county that says we got to fix this pond. And I'm like, trees are growing in it, sediment's built up, pipes are collapsing. It's like they're looking at $20,000, $30,000 worth of work, and the county and the state are going to make them make that repair. It's not an option.
Right.
It's like,
so
look, you're responsible for it.
Who's going to take the opportunity and turn it into a paycheck, right?
Right.
So you either bury your head in the sand and say, I don't want to fool with all this regulation, I don't get it, or you figure it out and, you create the niche.
That's my niche market.
Yeah.
I'm not a full-blown civil construction excavating company. I'm also not a landscaper. It's a niche market right in the middle. And I just focus on this, and I try to, indulge myself with the current regulations and what counties are doing on their end to enforce stuff and what the state's doing for each county at different times of the year. Mm-hmm. And you just follow along and be like, hey, I can help. Hey, I can help. This is what we can do. And it's worked out, and I enjoy the work too. I mean, because like I said, it's like light excavation work. Which, I mean, it's been good to me. It's kind of been my bread and butter.
Well, how much of your business would you say is on the ownership of the contract of the job or on the subcontracting from say a larger GC or, because honestly, I don't know the answer to that question, but there's the two realms that I see in our area is some are just completely focused, maybe like yourself, that only goes after the actual jobs and ownership of that job, bidding that job from the highest tier, then just subcontractors, which can be just as profitable, tagging along with, a big dog GC. Yeah.
So, Mckenzie is more geared up for going directly to the end user, right? So we'll go to those HOAs. Okay. We'll go to the that individual homeowner that's having a house built, and they're like, hey, we need to put in a rain garden. Or, hey, we need to put in a bioretention pond in the backyard or dry well or whatever it is. And that's kind of how we got into it, by doing it directly for the end consumer. But since then, and I've kind of branded us as like the environmental construction company that will do these, and we'll work with the local governments to make sure it's done correctly. I've had bigger excavators that are putting in subdivisions. They'll be like, hey, Gene, we need you to come do all the silt fence and just put in these retention ponds, and we just want you to handle the environmental side of it and just handle the state inspector, the MDE inspector. Uh-huh. Just you're in charge of that. If MDE comes out here, we want you here to represent us and do whatever they need you to do, and just send us the bill. Stay on top of it. I'm like, yeah, no problem at all. So it's kind of worked. It's kind of worked out good, because when you focus on the individual products, the bigger players in the game notice that, and then they start asking for your advice on that.
Yeah, you become the expert in that niche again. Right. And there's nothing. The desire to be the biggest and the baddest and have the most equipment and the most employees isn't always the most profitable, right?
No.
Find your niche that you're comfortable in and become an expert.
That's right.
I find it fascinating.
Yeah, no, it is. And like you're tied right into that, dude. I mean, the products that you provide are only going to be more and more required.
That's right.
And it's not going away.
No.
So, like I said, I cuss it all the time, but I also benefit from it all the time. So it's like a catch-22. So, but we got 5 minutes left of this recording device, man. So
got it.
Just want to wrap up a little bit. Thanks for coming on. I think it's been a good first podcast. I mean, we're definitely talking industry stuff but also just small business stuff and being a small business owner. I think we have a lot in common on how we got started and what we do, and
I mean, being that we have no idea what we're doing in this podcast room, I think it went pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, we never stopped talking.
I mean, I can't believe that's already an hour.
It's been an hour, yeah. So, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, like I said, before you cut off, if I can, I mean, your stuff is incredible. I love seeing your content. It's clean. It's easy to watch.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome, and you should keep it up.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. We're trying. It's like one of those industry standard things. Like people, at least in Southern Maryland, people that do the work that I do, this is like not part of their day-to-day. Like they don't advertise like this, at least not that I've seen. And I think I'm up to speed on most of their websites and stuff, like competitors or whatever. But it's really not, the YouTube videos and doing stuff like this and like the whole networking thing. It's something that such a big spectrum of people are involved with, but like at least in my industry, nobody's really doing it. No. So it's like, why not? Give it a shot.
No, and the ones that have been super successful with it.
Right.
It's another niche within a niche.
Yeah, man. So we'll see. And it's kind of another. I don't really necessarily like being on the internet or on camera. I'm not a movie star. Don't want to be a movie star, but I think it's necessary though. It kind of helps people get an idea of what we do. Guys like yourself on who we, like vendors who we work with, and people that are in the industry and really help everything move along. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Gordon,
glad to be here.
Thanks for coming on, buddy.
All right,
man.